medical student Dan rents a spare room to the eccentric Herbert West, a fellow medical student with a bone to pick with lecturer and Grant's manager Dr. Carl Hill, a corrupt figure with plenty of influence at the university, who Herbert accuses of being outdated and a plagiarist. One night, Dan discovers his cat has gone missing and learns that Herbert has kept its corpse in his mini-fridge for an experiment, a display of West's research, the use of a neon green liquid that brings the dead back to life with limited capacity, a catalyst that sets in motion nothing but chaos. This is Stuart Gordon's Re-Animator, a loose adaptation of HP Lovecraft's classic serialised story, Herbert West's Re-Animator, with a memorably sly performance from horror icon Jeffrey Combs as Herbert West. Re-Animator matches its contemporaries in grotesque ambition with impractical body horror crafted on a much smaller budget. Additionally, Re-Animator has a pulpy serial comic book-esque sense for mystery and exploitative violence that delves proudly into the territory of schlock and transgression. One of Re-Animator's greatest, most appealing aspects is its use of practical special effects and makeup to create grotesque and absurdist body horror. Wildly imaginative and equally as silly, Re-Animator doesn't shy from the vulgarity of eyes bursting, intestines coming to life, and outright decapitations. While we may think of David Cronenberg when we think of the peak of 80s body horror, Re-Animator demands attention be drawn more towards its schlocky, absurdist efforts akin to Brian Usner's Society, Usner also being the producer of this film, and even the DIY horrors of Full Moon Features. Composer Richard Band being related to the prolific producer of horror comedy schlock Charles Band, his earlier company Empire being responsible for the release of Re-Animator. The film's budget doesn't quite hide the seams and lacks the polish of a Cronenberg or Carpenter production, but there's a charm to Re-Animator's ropiness, its sometimes questionable performances, and its unconvincing sets that has likely inspired generations of cult horror filmmakers long after its release. The spirit of Re-Animator is present from Peter Jackson's Bad Taste, as well as to the previously mentioned Brian Usner's Society. A very loose adaptation of HP Lovecraft's own Re-Animator, Stuart Gordon's film condenses the essential elements of the story into a concise, no-bullshit film. A mad scientist brings the dead back to life with dire consequences. While the film retains some of Lovecraft's gross-out body horror, any tale that focuses on reanimating the dead is also bound to evoke Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, proposing the essential question, just because we can, does that mean we should? While not exactly striving for profundity, Re-Animator still recognises the consequences of a questionable ambition can be severe. Pride and jealousy can lead to similarly dire circumstances. Herbert's rivalry with Dr. Carl Hill motivates him to prove his ability to reanimate the dead, resulting in eventual bloodshed, a price to pay for simply being right in the face of his nemesis's arrogance, an act of arrogance in itself. The conflict of this film stems ultimately from a dick-swinging contest. Similarly, if Dr. Carl Hill wasn't so obsessed with being right, he wouldn't be motivated to eventually plagiarise Herbert's and Herbert's mentor Dr. Gruber's research. Re-Animator demonstrates how a back and forth of similar bitterness can erupt in hell, and by the finale, Herbert and Dan must truly overcome their morbid curiosities of reanimation to repair the damages done. Whether these characters learn from this fatal lesson, however, is another matter altogether. In conclusion, Stuart Gordon's Re-Animator earns its cult status from crafting bodily shocks on a much smaller budget in comparison to its body horror contemporaries. Once the ball gets rolling, the blood and gore generously flows. Re-Animator also presents a Mary Shelley-esque concept amidst its pulpy inspirations, maybe even somewhat similar to Stephen King's Pet Sematary. One's morbid ambition can always be their downfall. Just because we can doesn't mean that we should. Equally silly, amusing, grotesque and exploitative, Re-Animator is a bombastic horror show that's bound to be a favourite for any 80s movie gorehound. A special thank you to my incredible tier Patreon supporters Gail, Jared Spears of Concessions, Javier Grillo Maxwatch, and my super tier Patreon supporters Sportzilla and Eclair.